Everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, welcome along. My name is Caroline. I am a lecturer in physics. If you're a returning viewer of the channel, nice to have you back again. So on Monday this week, I chatted all about writing a CV, and we focus mainly on student CVs. So what you can do to set yourself up to apply for a graduate job, be that in industry, or maybe you're looking to continue your studies in academia. Today's video, it's a little bit different. I thought I would share the differences when you start to apply for lecture positions and how I needed to change my CV. Because my CV was a classic 2 pages in length. So, like all good websites and tips and hints will tell you, CVs should be fairly short documents, and typically you're looking at writing 2 sides of A4. And my CV always looked like that. So when I was applying to industry, my CV was a short 2-page CV. And then when I wanted to change from industry and return to academia and I started applying for a lectureship position, I quickly realised that I needed to change my CV. My starting point was my 2-page industry CV, and I had a traditional chronological CV. So I had my qualifications in reverse order. Then I had my employment history detailing the places that I'd worked and the positions I held. Then I had any notable achievements or, particular awards. And then of course some kind of skills section at the end and my references. So that was my starting point, and I could use that starting point to then kind of draw out what my academic lecturer CV needed to look like. And for my academic lecturer CV, I needed to show that I could be successful at research, teaching and administration duties. So let's start with teaching. So in my case, I'd been within industry. So I didn't necessarily have loads of lectures I'd given to students. I mean, I'd done some supervision. So I'd supervised PhDs. When I was a PhD student, I'd supervised kind of undergraduate students in the laboratories. But after that point, I hadn't necessarily done any formal academic type teaching because I'd left academia and I'd gone to industry. But what I did have was a lot of outreach, public talks, speaking at festivals, speaking on the radio. So I could show in my extended CV loads of places where I'd given talks, prepared material, spoken in front of large audiences. And I guess what I was trying to demonstrate on my CV at that point was, although I might not have done the teaching, I am comfortable talking in front of a large crowd. I am comfortable preparing material to talk in front of a large crowd. And I'd also done a lot of mentoring. So I was the team and technical leader for my group in industry, and I had graduate hires, and so I'd mentored them through to becoming chartered physicists. And I also had experienced hires who I'd worked with as they kind of shaped their career. And so I was able to put down within that teaching section of my extended CV, my mentoring experience, my public talks, my outreach talks, basically just showing that I could help other people progress in their career and that I could impart knowledge in a variety of formats. So that for me was fulfilling kind of like the teaching section in my extended CV. But then I also needed to demonstrate research. And so in my case, I was coming to academia from industry. So quite often people will apply to being a lecturer after they've done maybe 1 postdoc or 2 postdocs, but that wasn't the case for me. So my research experience was industrial-based research experience. And actually I had a lot of papers that I'd published, so I was able to list those. I travelled to conferences, so I could put those events down. My team had also travelled representing their work to different conferences, and I'd been co-authors or I'd been the project sponsor, so I could list those articles of work down. And then key, I guess, for the extended CV to be an academic lecturer is they're looking as well to see if you've won any money. And so if you'd been a postdoc before you'd applied, maybe you'd have applied for some research grants or some travel grants. Again, I was coming from industry, but what I did have was many years of applying for commercial funding and grant funding. So I was able to list those things down under my kind of research section on my extended CV. And another thing I needed to demonstrate when I was applying to be a lecturer is that I could be creative and I could come up with my own novel ideas for science. And so what I was able to do for that section was I could list out students that I'd supervised. So again, I was in an industry setting, but I'd supervised master students, so they used to come on year-long placements within my team, and I had a whole variety of those from different universities. And then I'd also supervised as the industry supervisor of PhD students, so I could list those. Altogether, I guess that gave me a nice body of research evidence that I could come up with research ideas, I could win funding for them, both commercial contracts and grant contracts, and I could come up with coherent work that let students, apprentices and permanent staff members all work together. And that actually all went into my extended CV. So already my CV is now getting quite a bit longer than these 2 pages. I still needed to keep things like notable talks, notable achievements. I've been lucky enough to pick up a couple of science awards, so they needed to go in as well. So this is getting me up now to the 4-5 page mark in my CV. And then you get the publication record. And depending on where you are in your career will depend on how much, I guess, of that publication record you might show in your CV. If you're going to be a professor, you may not show the entirety of your publication record. You may pick out selected highlights or notable works. In my case, I was going for a lecturer position, so the entry grade when you come back into academia. And so in my case, I was able to show quite a lot of the publication titles that I'd published. I had a fairly long list at the end of my CV of publications, documents, things I'd authored as well for maybe popular science magazines or slightly different writing formats. Again, it's all showing within my CV that I can write for different audiences, that I actually finish my research, I write my research up, and that I am getting published in journals. And that is why the academic CV when you apply for a lecturer is longer than the 2-page CV that I was previously using in industry. It's because I had to put in all these extra bits. The nice thing is that when you make an application to become a lecturer, or at least from my experience here in the UK, when you put that application together, actually there's quite a nice guiding process from the university. They tell you what things they're looking for you to put together in your CV, what they need to see, and the suggested ordering of how it needs to be laid out. And so it's like a bit of a formula. I took my 2-page CV, I saw these extra sections that they needed, and basically I just filled in the gaps. I expanded those sections, I put in more detail, and it's actually quite satisfying. You end up with quite a nice document that I guess, reflects everything you've been up to. I would say again that my case is a little bit different because I was coming from industry back into academia. I suspect most people when they apply to be a lecturer will be coming off the back of postdocs. So they'll have postdoc positions they've held, research they've done for their postdocs, they might have worked in particular laboratories or used particular computers. But I think the general idea is the same. When you're putting together a CV to be a lecturer, you're trying to showcase the fact that you're going to be a good match for the job. And the job is that mix of research, teaching and admin. So you need your CV to reflect the fact that you've got skills in each of those areas. They didn't want to employ a lecturer who was going to be awesome at research but never want to teach because they didn't want to talk in front of a crowd. Equally, they didn't want to have somebody who wanted to teach all the time and just do educational materials, because as valuable as that is, they also needed lecturers to lead research for PhD students, for the research group, and to further the knowledge that comes out of that university. So yeah, it was good fun putting it together. Now I've got it, I have my extended academic CV, and I've actually retained a 1 to 2 page resume as well, so that I've got both kinds of CV. Because when I apply to renew my professional memberships, and when I apply for some society things, it's actually not appropriate to send the academic lecture CV. I'm actually better off sending the short 1 to 2 page resume, much shorter CV, because it fulfills their brief. So now I have both kinds of CV, which is cool. I guess the CV that I haven't added to my collection is more of the 2-page competency-based CV. My 2-page CV is, I guess, a more traditional style. But anyway, enough about my personal ramblings of my CV. That was the difference. So that's why I said in Monday's video, most CVs are going to be 2 pages, apart from in some cases, and one of those special cases is if you apply to be a lecturer. So yeah, I hope that was vaguely interesting. We had a great comment come in saying, can we have a chat about why I picked the university that I chose to apply to be a lecturer at? And we definitely can chat about that. It's a really good question. So I'll try to record some content either next week or the week after, explaining the criteria and why I applied to the certain university I'm at, and a little bit more about my journey. I would say again that applying for lecturer positions are really competitive. So don't feel disheartened if you're applying for lecturer positions and you're not securing maybe interviews, or maybe you're getting to interviews and then you're not quite getting the job at the end. Lecturer positions are tough to get, so keep going, stick with it. If you're not getting to interview, maybe pause, have a look at your CV, see if there's anything you can change, any skills you can bring out to try to strengthen your case, and try to make sure that you're applying for lectureship positions that are a good match to your skill set, which again can be difficult because there's not many lectureship positions out there to apply for. But anyway, next week I'll do a little bit of a chat about how I chose my university to apply against. And in the future, if you're interested, I could also chat through the interview process. Again, I've experienced interviews in industry and academia, and the academia lecturer interview was very different to the ones that I've had. Well, it had a different format to the ones that I've had in industry. Then of course, don't forget, next week we have July's favourites, which I'm very excited to share. So that'll be coming up. And then we are into August. And I am the physics admissions tutor, so I'll be sharing a bit of the insight into what it's like as we go through the exam results season. So if you're a student waiting to get your results, or maybe you're just wondering how the whole process works, hopefully August will give you a little bit of kind of insight into what admission tutors get up to. When everyone thinks we're having a lovely relaxing summer, actually we're very busy dealing with the university intake. But I hope your week is going well. I hope you're managing to stay safe. Keep looking after yourselves wherever you are in the world. If the video was fun or useful, do hit like, do hit subscribe. It's lovely to have an academic group here on YouTube. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next week. Bye.